Welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Altitude podcast. Today I'm joined by Dillon. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Dillon James. I'm a pilot for TUI, flying the Boeing 737-800 and 737 MAX. And before TUI, trained at Skyborne Airline Academy, and I've been flying since about 2010. So here, there, and everywhere.
I'm looking forward to this one. Basically, Dillon, my aim with this podcast, I've sort of got my training on hold at the minute. I'm dispatching as well in the meantime, but just want to basically get something going where I can make a little community and talk about aviation, basically. People to hear it from the start to finish about different pilots' journeys and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
looking
absolutely.
forward to it. First question asked to all my guests. When did you first realise you wanted to become a pilot?
So I first realised back in 2004, which is, I was about 7 years old at the time. I was on a Britannia Airbus A320 going to Ventura, and I'd been on flights before, but I'd never quite had the kind of epiphany. And I don't know why that particular flight, I was like, this is literally the coolest thing I've ever done. And I was just absolutely obsessed from that point onwards. So it was airplane books, airplane models, airplane games, anything aviation related. And that didn't change, and it's not really changed much now, me being 28. So, yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's the same for me, really. My nan used to take me to Cambridge Airfield, and we'd go watch the little planes take off from there. And I think I caught the bug that evening, to be
Yeah.
honest. I had my first discovery flight when I was 17, and then I was like, yeah, I need to do this as soon as possible, really. So I've just been saving up and trying to do it whenever I could, really. So if I could take you from the start of your training, I think you did some training in Florida. Is that right? What was your first lesson, and how was that?
Oh gosh, my first lesson. Yeah, that was back in 2010. So I joined the Air Cadets when I was 13. So yeah, we did some flying in the Grob Vigilant out of St Athan near Cardiff Airport, and managed to do some flying in the Tutor as well. And then did some glider flying and microlight flying, sort of around Wales, Manchester, and Spain, few sort of places. But then I joined an integrated course in 2022. At the time, it sort of worked out cheaper than actually doing modular, because it was after COVID and the prices were good. So did my first flight lesson with them up in Florida. We just flew around, it's called Vero Beach. So
I
it's
saw it on your Instagram.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw it. It looks unbelievable.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, it was good fun, man. Really good fun. Yeah, so that's we just sort of flew around that area, in the PA-28. So I'd been flying for a few years then, and I actually already had a PPL, but my mate, my flight partner who was with me, he'd never flown before really in that capacity, and he was like, whoa. So yeah, we had a bit of fun with it. It was great, and our instructor, a guy called Luis, he became like one of our closest friends. He still is one of my closest friends now, and we still keep in touch, and he comes to visit sometimes. So
that's lovely.
yeah, no, it was good, man. It was good. Yeah, I had a really good time.
I think it's such a small community and it's such a niche interest. I think when you find people that have the same interest as you, I think you can come quite close quite quickly. I think from what I've experienced so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely a lot of different personalities in the industry, but I definitely think like when you find somebody who shares your interest and who's similar to you, definitely through being in aviation, it does definitely strengthens things. So absolutely, yeah.
When you were training in Florida, what was the hardest part of your training, would you say?
So I'd say the hardest part wasn't, and not in a cocky way at all. I
Yeah, of
wouldn't
course.
say the hardest part was the flying as such. It was the ground school, I'd say, or maybe the instrument rating. Like the ground school, you got to do your 13 ATPLs, and that's 13 exams in 6 months. For me particularly, like I didn't really have a background in maths or physics. The last time I did it was at my GCSEs, which was like nearly 10 years before I did the actual course. So they were, first day it was like trigonometry and Pythagoras. I was like, what?
I don't miss them days.
I was like, I didn't think I'd have to use this. But you do. So yeah, that I found that quite tough. But got through it, put in a lot of work, and in the end I got an average, which I was quite happy with. and the academy was quite happy with. So yeah, but it was tough. Instrument rating, I think that's the part in your flight training where flying becomes more of a science than an art. You know, you go from the kind of the love of exploring and flying and just feeling the aircraft to know the technicalities of, you know, VORs, NDBs, holding, all of these kind of things, which yeah, definitely take it to that other level. But at the same time, you know, just like anything, it was just preparation. Just prepare. Don't sit around doing nothing on your days off, and you'll be okay.
Was you nervous throughout your training, would you say, or would you say once you sort of got in the rhythm, you was okay?
I was nervous. I was somebody who was quite nervous, and I was known for it on my course. For me, it was more due to sort of my circumstances. Like, you know, money was tight getting into the course, and I kind of had to. I just about scraped enough to afford it, so I knew at every point that I wouldn't get another go. So there was always this kind of thing in my mind. It's like, well, if you mess this up and you get chopped, you know, you can't do this again. This is kind of a once in a lifetime kind of gig. Unless, you know, I get a job and then, you know, try again when I'm like 40. So I think I was very nervous before the exams. You know, I was known for sort of pacing and just kind of being in my own little box before tests. Yeah, but I was very nervous. Some guys weren't. You know, some guys would literally just, they just, you know, obviously they cared, but they just didn't feel nervous, which I think is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Um,
natural.
and that, yeah, most of us were just an in between. But I think I definitely took it. Yeah, I was definitely always kind of like, you need to pass this. You know, you can't fail it, which isn't healthy, to be honest. But that was just the way my brain was through my training.
I think it's such a cutthroat thing, though. I mean, your medical can go before you know it and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's all. I think the quicker you do it, the better. In some regards, I think I'm on the same thing. So I'm not in your position yet. Hopefully, one day I will be. But it's just a case trying to
No,
get
of
done as
course.
soon as possible to avoid any medical issues or anything you can't really control, isn't it? So
Yeah, I mean, like the medical stuff, obviously, like I still get to, you know, before a validation, you know, there's always that part you was like, oh, you know, I hope this goes well. um, but yeah, like especially with the flight training, I think within the first month our course halved, because there were some who got, you know, put back because they weren't, you know, at the sort of pace, or there were others who just had to leave. So it is a very real pressure. And yeah, so I think like that does kind of play into sort of how you go about the exams and how you feel about them, you know.
when you were doing the integrated course or even your PPL, probably most likely you're integrated, but for people that maybe are doing it at the moment and they've got a bit of free time, maybe listen to this. How would you stop yourself comparing yourself to other faster progressing peers? And how do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, so when I did my training, I kind of had to take a bit of a kind of pragmatic approach. I think comparison comes from ego, and it does, and an ego is something that's embedded into everybody. You know, if my mate, he did something better than me, yeah, I'd be a bit like, oh, well done. But I'd be a bit like, oh, come on, I should have been doing that. You know what I mean? You know, it's
Of course.
normal. So I think what I had to tell myself, and what I did tell myself throughout my training, is everybody's got some life experience or some naturally embedded skill that makes them good at that particular task. And, you know, this guy, for example, is extremely good at holding. I don't know why, but it's because, you know, he's either naturally good at it, or he's done something similar that's allowed his mental capacity to do it in a different job or something like that. Whereas I might be good at something else. And I think in aviation particularly, that's kind of the fundamental, is recognizing that everybody brings something to the table. Just because somebody's better than you at one thing, it doesn't necessarily mean they're better than you overall. You'll be better than them at something, and, you know, don't take it personally. You know, with the ATPLs, like with the exams, there was people who were coming in, they had backgrounds in maths, physics, they did degrees in physics, they had A levels, whereas I came from a TV and film background. So, you know, when they were getting it and smashing out the equations, and I could barely count to five, all right, maybe not that bad, but I was kind of
Six.
like, well, yeah, six, yeah. I was thinking, well, yeah, I can't beat myself up too much, because that's just something they're good at, you know. But it and I think the thing with flight training, though, natural ability can take you so far, and then it is genuinely just about how much work you put in.
Mm.
And you know, we saw very smart guys come into the academy, and very very smart, and they didn't actually get through because they just didn't put the work in. And it's kind of like, well, you know, like, this is what I mean. It's just about the work you put in.
I think your path probably helped, similar to my path, in the case of you're doing a separate career, saving up for this one, and then pursuing it from there. Probably helps in our case, I think, because some
Yeah,
guys, if they get given the money straight away for the whole integrate course, for example, they don't really appreciate it probably as much as people like yourself or myself that save up every single penny for it.
yeah, of course. I mean, you did see people come in and they kind of they weren't they weren't as keen on being pilots, but their parents had just gone, well, if you want to do it, here's, 100 grand, go off and
Yeah,
do it. And you'd certainly see the difference in pressure, I think, like compared to sort of how we might perceive it. And they were kind of like, well, if I fail, I fail, I'm just kind of like, well, fair enough.
I think it's a bit of misconception with, like you said, with the degrees and stuff, because you don't need them, do you? And I think people think when they first go into want to be a pilot, they think they need degrees and you need GCSEs, right? That's all you actually technically need on paper, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you don't need a degree. You don't even need A levels. You just need GCSEs, A
Mm.
star to C minus. I don't know what it is nowadays. Um,
I think it's
but yeah,
grade 5 and above, I believe, in the UK.
grade
I think
five and
it's
above.
grade 5 and above. Yeah, from what I've seen lately,
Yeah,
anyway.
that's it. Yeah, grade 5 and above. But like, yeah, no airline's going to ask for a degree or an A level. The academy, they didn't ask for A levels. They just asked for GCSEs. So um, I say it does. It doesn't hurt to have A levels and to have a bit of life experience as well. It's always a good thing. But yeah, they're not bothered.
And if you could start again, obviously I know you did the PPL in Cardiff at home. Would you do modular, or would you go do the integrated again?
Ooh, that's a good question. Integrated.
Yeah,
Yeah, integrated. Because with integrated, we sort of talked about pressure, but that pressure gets you through it quickly. So yeah, it was a luxury to be able to do integrated, because it's that kind of, I've got 18 months to do this, but going into it, if you hold up your end of the bargain in 18 months time, you'll come out the other end qualified. With modular, I think it can be very easy to fall into the trap of, oh, well, I'm in the middle of it, but life's getting in the way and just putting things off. And then, there's guys I know, and they've been doing the modular training for like the best part of a decade. And I think with me particularly, I'm the kind of person who to achieve something, I kind of need that kind of pressure. Otherwise, I'll just procrastinate and do something else. So,
mm.
um, integrated all the way. I think as well, having the consistency. Skygon was a really good academy. I genuinely, I can't knock it. It was a fantastic place to train. They had good instructors. There was consistency always. All the way through. So like, that's something you wouldn't really get if you were kind of going from school to school doing modular. So yeah, integrated all the way, 100%.
Because I think there's probably people that are listening that are sort of in the boat of what do I do and how to spend the money the best way, because money can be tight and you want to spend it in the most
Mm.
efficient way, really, don't you?
I think a misconception people have is they think if they do modular, they're not going to get a job.
Yeah.
Because there was this old thing that came from God knows what era, and it was kind of like, oh well, airlines prefer integrated cadets, and maybe that used to be the case, but certainly not now. When I did my typewriting at TUI, I was the only integrated guy on the course. All the rest of them are modular. So like, airlines really not bothered. They just want the right person for the job. So yeah, I'd say like, just do what you can. There's plenty of ways to skin a cat.
I love that. So
Yeah.
talking of TUI, so if we've got people that are listening that are trying to maybe go for their first interview, any tips for people that are trying to do the interview process?
Yeah, TUI. So TUI's a friendly company, and I think like in terms of going through the day, so like you kind of apply online, or at least when I went through the process, you apply online and then you do like a video interview, and then if you pass that, you go to the East Midlands Centre, and then you do like the full day, which is like all the sort of bits and bobs. I found it really fun. Like the TUI recruitment team, they're just really funny. They're a really funny group of people. They just keep it very friendly, keep it upbeat. They make it an enjoyable experience,
Mm.
and that's awesome. It's yeah, I certainly felt like it was like, it just felt like, a really a nice day out, as well as a kind of the undertone of it being quite serious as well. But yeah, there was lots of laughs, lots of jokes, lots of sort of good moments. And the interview itself, like, at least in my case, it didn't really feel like an interview. The recruitment team, I think, at TUI, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a TUI pilot, but
Of
like, I
course.
think the interview, yeah, the recruitment team at TUI, they've got a very good way of keeping it natural. You don't feel like you're being interrogated. It definitely just feels like a bit of a two-way dialogue, and you know, then they'll decide on whether they've got what they need. So and that's where I felt, and I came away from it just feeling like, I'd had quite a nice day out, had a good chat. There was things I was like, oh, I wish I'd sort of said this and said that, but I didn't come out thinking, oh my gosh, that was like some sort of military grade, interview process. So yeah, I think in terms of advice, what I'd say is look at the CAA competency matrix. That's, like, the interview is a lot about, do we like you as, not like you as a person, but how do we find you as a person? Because you can say all the right stuff, but if your attitude's horrendous, like, the recruiters are going to pick up on that.
Yeah, of course.
um so yeah, they're looking for somebody that can sit in the cockpit with for 8 hours, to Larnaca and back, or wherever.
Yeah, there's a hiding,
um
is there?
yeah, that's it, yeah. But objectively, they also have to grade it based on, certain things, like KSA, knowledge, skills, and attitude. Um, and that's kind of in the CA competency matrix. There's very defined kind of, does the candidate demonstrate these aspects? How do they demonstrate it? To what effect do they demonstrate it? So I'd say just look into that, and make sure when you're answering the question, you're kind of having that in the back of your mind. What kind of competencies am I showing? Because me saying, yeah, I rescued a cat from a tree, what competency does that show? I think it's important to emphasize that I took the initiative to rescue the cat from the tree because I believe that it's important to help others. And I was in my uniform, and I thought, as an ambassador for the company. You see what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
It's these competencies that you're trying to demonstrate.
It's the bigger picture, isn't it?
Exactly that. And another good one, a good friend of mine who got he got the BA Speedway program, actually, very, very talented guy. With like interviews, he's ridiculously good at interviews. Like, I did a mock interview with him, and he was just rattling off answers, and I was like, wait, how did you even like where did you get that from? Like, that's like a HR's, like, like, absolute dream. But anyway, he said to me something really good. He said, whenever you're answering a question, relate it back to why that's important to you. So, like, in TUI, they sort of said, why TUI? And you can talk about, the fleet and stuff like that. It's got 737s, it's got this many, and you fly to these destinations. And that's okay, that's good. But why does that make you want to join TUI? You know what I mean? And, so then you should go on to say something like, well, and, as somebody who wants to progress and have diversity within my career and see these different destinations, and as somebody who wants to be part of a growing company, and all of these things, and I think people sometimes fall into the trap in interviews of, they kind of say the what but not the how, or the why, sorry. I think it's good to elaborate and sort of relate it back to yourself, because that's kind of the meat and bones of it, really.
And then you've done your interview. Tell us about your first day.
Gosh, first day. So the first day was pretty chilled. It was an induction. It was an induction day down in Luton. So you go through everything. I think the thing I was really, because after you do that day, then we had to go in the sim and do a test in the sim, which was a raw data ILS. And I had to do it in the 737 sim, and I hadn't even done my IR at that point. Never
Right.
mind my like MCC or anything, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fly this? So yeah, that was nerve wracking, but managed to pass it somehow. Yeah, first day, yeah, that was just an induction. It's pretty chilled, and then they kind of ease you into it. They don't just throw you straight into like the type rating and all that kind of stuff. Like, you do some, SEP. So like, I'd imagine you do the same with the security stuff in work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you do like all the security training, and it's kind of nice, and then you kind of gradually start like the home study for the type rating. So I kind of I like the way they do it. So I didn't actually get like properly nervous until like it was like in the sim for the type rating. Well, not, I wouldn't say nervous, but I was a bit like, oh, okay, this is actually serious. Oh no, I tell a lie. Sorry, there was an exam that we had to do when I got back from a home study, and it was like 100 questions, closed book, and that was fun. So yeah, I was nervous. I think that was the first moment I was like properly nervous. I think at TUI, I was like, oh my gosh, we're past this. But yeah, it was all good.
What surprised you the most about joining an airline?
Oh, now that's a good question. What surprised me the most? How hard it was. And I'm not a cocky person. But I didn't expect it to be that hard. Like the line training. And I know some guys will say the line training was easy, and the line training, it wasn't like super difficult, but I just kind of, when you're in flight school, you look at the airline world and you kind of go, oh well, it's pretty straightforward stuff. You got the autopilot, and you're a multi crew, you're flying with a captain, and it's like, yeah, but when you join and you actually start your line training, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that you just wouldn't think you would have to even consider, which you have to think about. And especially on the 737, if you're if you're not careful, it can bite you, and it will bite you if you're not careful. So yeah, like descent management, for example. That wasn't even something I ever thought was even a thing, like until like getting towards the kind of end of my type rating after we'd done all the emergency stuff and then starting the line training. And then it's like, oh wait, no, I actually have to really think about the descent, like, so, because if I don't, then they shortcut us, I'm going to end up high, and if I don't correct it properly, so there was just loads of little things, and I was like, kind of like, that's actually way harder than I thought it was going to be, but not unachievable, and certainly not like difficult to the point where you're just like, I can't do it, but definitely harder. And landing the 737, me being a little bit cocky, I was like, well, I can land the PA-28, the DA-42, the 737, be fine. It wasn't. I was, oh my gosh, this is quite tricky actually. It's a heavy plane, and if you flare at the wrong point, you'll feel it, and they'll feel it.
Do the speeds feel that different? Obviously, I've in the sense of the moment. Do you feel
Yeah.
that speed difference?
So I didn't really notice the speed difference, but I think we kind of gradually work up to it, because we, in flight school, we sort of fly the PA-28, and then we go into like the advanced version, which has got like the retractable gear. Then we fly the DA-42, and then you kind of move on to the 7.3 and you do all the sim stuff. So like the speed, I wouldn't say was a huge thing, but it's the ground rush in the flare. So like, and that's because of the speed, because you're coming a lot faster. The ground, it just looks like it's coming up to meet you, quite fast. And what a lot of guys will do is they'll flare too early, or they'll flare too much and float it, which is very common. Or some will be so saturated with just trying to keep it on the centre line and on the glide path, they won't flare. And that's where it absolutely smacks it in. So yeah, but the ground rush is definitely different to what you'll see in a PA-28. It just comes up like that. Oh my gosh, But yeah, I mean, but there's ways around it, and that's the same in any plane. Any big jet, there's ways around it. Like we're kind of advised during training to do it on the rad alt, so 50, 40, 30 pause flare. Airbus guys, I don't think they do it on the rad alt. They just do it on vibes. But each to their own.
Are you glad that you got on the Boeing, or compared to the
um,
Airbus, or are you not? Are you not too fast?
in hindsight, now I can look back and go, I'm so glad I'm on the Boeing. But like realistically, I'd have taken any plane, because I just love flying. But I do like the Boeing. It's got a lot of character, and there's this kind of this whole thing about Airbus being better than Boeing and vice versa. And I always, because my girlfriend, she flies the Airbus, and people always go, oh, Airbus is better than Boeing. It's kind of like, well, it's not. There's different design philosophies. Airbus relies more on automation, flight by wire, puts the aircraft in charge, and Boeing relies more, above all, on the pilot's judgment. And that's just a different way of doing it. It doesn't really mean that one's better than the other. So yeah, but I like the 737. I've learned to love it, and I try to push the right buttons. So
That's the main thing.
Yeah, it doesn't give me too much grief then.
Have you guys got the NG,
Yeah.
or you're on the Max?
Both.
You're
Yeah,
on both.
both.
Yeah. So you're
Yeah, both.
is it the same type rating for both?
Yes, it is. Yeah, but you'll do a max. So like I did my type rating on the NG, and then you do like a max differences course, which is like 1 day. And it's pretty much all about kind of the MCAS system and how to recover and stuff like that, and yeah, all the nasty bits. But yeah, it's good fun.
If you could change one thing about the 7.3, what would it be?
The tray table, yeah, I will give the Airbus guys that. It is a bit of a pain. I don't know how they would do it, but yeah, sometimes having a tray on your lap can be a because you got the yoke there, and like when the autopilot's controlling the aircraft, the yoke is still moving, and if it's turbulent, the yoke is moving. You're there with your tray, like come on. So yeah, it would be nice to have a little thing. I think if they could install something into the side, like by the seat, where you can pull the tray out and across,
Comes out,
that'd be
yeah.
like that would be awesome. Yeah, and the only other thing I'd say, the 737 is quite slippery. I don't know if it's much different on the Airbus, but like, if you're descending, it will not. If you have to really try hard to get to slow down, it doesn't like slowing down.
A lot of speed brake.
Which, yeah, this is what I mean. You kind of have to use the speed brake or be very smart in how you kind of do it. So like sometimes you can go a little bit below the path and then slow down to recapture it, and that's a good way. Or you can use the speed brake, or you can get the flaps out and stuff. But yeah, I think it'd be nicer if it was a bit more speed stable in the descent. Not like one of my mates suggested and put it into a side slip. Do not do that. But
That'd be interesting.
yeah, it would. Yeah, engine stalled. Yeah.
What about your favourite thing about the 7.3? What do you love about it?
You know what I love about the 7.3 is I've always been a nerd for the classics. And seeing something, and I know some people hate this about the 7.3, but seeing something that has still like relics of the 1960s, you still feel like you're flying a proper plane.
Yeah.
You see all the buttons, all the dials. I just love that. I honestly, I know it sounds stupid, but I just love the fact that the overhead panel hasn't really changed much since it first came out, 60 years ago. Like, I just think that's awesome. And having all the buttons to press, I love it. And also the 737, it is a blooming workhorse and it's a reliable aircraft. Like, there's a lot, everyone goes on about sort of what happened with the Max and stuff, but the 737 is an absolute workhorse. It's designed, you can really put it through a lot, and it will keep you alive. It will keep you going, which I think is rare in well, not rare because the 737 is very popular, but it's a great thing about it. And this is why companies have the confidence to let guys like me who've just come from flight school just go straight onto it, because it's like it is a very well designed plane, very well engineered. So I just love it. I just love 737.
And when you work on the 7.3, what's a typical sort of week like for you? Do you work most of the
Well,
week? Obviously, I know it'd be different now compared to the summer. I'm sure you're much busier in the summer, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm much busier in the summer. Yeah, so it changes. But in the winter, yeah, like you only fly a few times a month. It's pretty nice. So I'm just chilling here most days. But in the winter, yeah, it can be. That's right. In the summer, it can be like, I don't know, 3-4 days a week flying maybe. Sometimes I've seen it like maybe once. It was like a 5-day work week. But yeah, it's not too bad. Like it varies sort of your shift. So like sometimes you might do like 3 earlies and then 2 lates. But that's if you have like a horrid week. It's like 5 days in a row. Like usually it's like 3 or 4. And yeah, you might start with an early or a late, or you might just be on lates. But yeah, in terms of like day to day, sort of waking up, looking through bits and bobs, getting dressed, shower, get to the crew room, have a brief with the skipper, get out to the plane, and then you sort of decide as well before that, who flies it out and who flies it back. And then yeah, you'll just sort of go wherever really, turn around on the ground, get the packs off, get the other ones back on, do a little walk around, try and stretch your legs, and then come back. Pretty cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
Talking to skippers from a FO's perspective, what makes a good captain? Would you say? I'm sure you've flown with
I
a few.
think, yeah, I think I think a good captain is one who can put himself in the FO shoes. Because at TUI, the captains are very good, to be fair, but you do hear stories, and it's sometimes captains, some skippers, it's kind of like they sometimes don't understand that it's quite difficult in the right hand seat, when you're new, and it's kind of putting that pressure on. But I've never personally had it, but you do hear stories of captains really kind of having quite a strong expectation on the person in the right hand seat, and it's kind of like, well, they're still learning. You've got to kind of slow down to kind of work as a team. And I'd say the best skippers I've flown with are the ones who've got that balance just right, and that balance is kind of giving guidance when it's needed, and you know, if something needs to be done, then, you know, maybe intervention, or maybe saying, I think we should probably do this, but not micromanaging. Because I think, you know, particularly like with newer captains flying with newer FOs, there's always going to be that kind of, right, you know, I need to be a little bit more alert. And that can easily go into kind of being very micromanager, you know, sort of, well, do this, do that, flying through the FO, which isn't actually going to help the FO. So I think it's good when the captain can take a step back, watch and observe, has the confidence to kind of go, I'll leave him do it, and if he needs help, then I'll step in. But also uses, you know, lets the guy learn as well. And as I said, you know, TUI, they're pretty, you know, they're good for that. To be honest, there's you'd be very rare to find a captain who, you know, doesn't kind of give you the benefit of the doubt and, you know, trust you. You know what I mean?
It only helps you learn quicker and makes you more effective, especially if you want to become a captain one day as well. Then
Yeah,
helps them in the long run, doesn't it? So
absolutely. I mean, these are kind of golden years, and I can appreciate where I'm sat, where it's kind of like, you know, and this isn't saying that I would be neglectful, but I'm in a position where, okay, if I do make a mistake, I've got somebody next to me who's more experienced, who can help get me out of it. Whereas I don't want to be waiting till I'm a captain to do all the difficult stuff, because the person in the right hand seat, you know, they're going to be like, well, you've got
relying
us
on
into
you.
it. Yeah, that's it. So, you know, well, they might be anyway, you know, but yeah, so I think it's good for captains to kind of let FOs try things, and utilize the kind of gradient and experience you've got next to you, and you know, but some skippers want an easy day out, and that's completely fair as well. And, you know, if they see an 18 knot crosswind, they're going to be like, you're not doing it. Because, you know, I just don't want any reports, so, you know, that's fair.
Of
So
course.
yeah.
I think obviously being a pilot, you've got to have a fair share of your own resilience and discipline. If I could ask you personally, how do you sort of navigate feedback and criticism throughout your training?
Oh, you get feedback. I got feedback on my flight today. You know, we get feedback all the time. I think reframing feedback from something negative to something positive is the most important thing you can do in your career. Genuinely. You know, going back to what I said about ego earlier, people can get feedback and they can take it personally, and they can take it as, I'm bad at my job. That's not the case. You know, in the airline world, where things are predicated on safety, feedback is just a tool to get you to a standard that's required. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when you reframe it in that way, it becomes a lot more constructive. So, you know, in flight school, in the academy, feedback feels a little bit different, because you're on a training course. The lesson is a pass or a fail. If you fail it, it's because you've not met the training objectives, and because you've probably done something wrong. And so when I joined the airline, I remember a very senior line trainer saying to me, I was like, am I where I'm supposed to be, you know? And he was like, well, you know, am I measuring you against somebody who's come from the Royal Air Force, or somebody who's come from Diamond DA-42s? You know, and I was like, yeah. And he said, when we're giving you debriefs, you know, you're getting these reports through, it's not criticism, it's, we've identified something that we can implement to get you to the standard. And I was like, oh gosh, I didn't never thought of it like that. And not taking it personally, not taking it, I'm doing something wrong, I'm bad at this, and taking it as something like, you know, this is a tool to get me to company standard. This is a tool to get me to where the company wants me. You know, that is, and there's a kind of art to it, in detaching yourself as well. And, you know, as pilots, we are very self-critical people. You will be when you know, I'd imagine you probably already are through your training.
Yeah.
We,
I
we
dispatch at the moment, so I'm the same dispatching. So I'm definitely going to be the same
yeah,
when I'm being a pilot, definitely.
yeah, and we beat ourselves up, and you know, I ain't gonna lie, if I have a bad landing, I think about it for a good week afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, that's human nature, but it's important to kind of try and push it to the side, try and frame it as, okay, well, I've actually learned something, and I know I'm not going to do that again. You get high on the approach, or you get speed unstable, or something. It's kind of like, well, I've got to see that in person now, and that can make me a better captain, and someday, because you can guarantee you'll be sat there with an FO who's making the same mistake, and you've done that before.
Remember the days.
That's it.
I think
So,
aviation's full of so many things that can happen that you can't train for. Obviously,
oh yeah,
you sort of train on the job for it. And obviously, I know
yeah,
you guys have
yeah.
extensive sim sessions, but it's probably the same in some little things that even passenger disruptions, you can't really train for some things that you get, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's airmanship, isn't it? Yeah, and to be fair, like the TUI and the airlines, they know you can't train for every eventuality. So this is why they use a competency framework. So it's like we're not seeing whether you click the right button; we're seeing the process that led you to do it, because then that can be applied to anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why in our sims we don't get box ticks. Well, we kind of get box ticks for like how well we've flown the approach or how well we did the go round. But the overarching thing is flight path management, you know, leadership and teamwork, application of knowledge, and like it's competency based. And you know, and that's something that goes back to the interview. That's they're looking for competencies, you know, if this person's put in that situation, they've demonstrated leadership and teamwork, so they'll be able to, or problem solving and decision making, they'll be able to sort of articulate and kind of make the best of it. So yeah, and I think that's kind of the way we get around it these days, which I think is pretty good actually.
Is there anything that you've learned about yourself, about how you learn?
um, Learn, gosh, no, I'm joking. Yeah, how I learn. Yeah, I sort of with I've sort of learned that kind of under pressure, I seem that's what seems to kind of propel me a bit more. So like the pressure of the integrated course, I think was actually um, something that helped. But I feel like sometimes I'm governed more by fear than wanting to achieve. You know, like when I did my ATPLs, I was so like I never went into an exam wanting to get 100%. I didn't care about that. The only thing I cared about was not failing it, and that was the biggest thing in my mind. So I studied as hard as I could for every exam, and it was like, do not fail this, do not fail this. Even up until the last exam, I was like, you do not fail this. Just I get 75%, that's fine. But through the work that I put in, because I put so much pressure on myself, I actually got it was the highest average they had in the academy at that time.
Oh wow.
So like I think my style is just throw as much I just throw as much as I can into it. And then leave the outcome for itself basically. But and the big but is that doesn't always work. So, you know, I did my sim recently in Gatwick, and I spent like a week going over everything, trawling through everything. And then the stuff in the sim that I actually found difficult, or well, not difficult, but well, yeah, difficult. Yeah, it was stuff that I just didn't even think would even come up. I was like, oh, like this, I didn't even know this was gonna you know what I mean? So
Mm.
yeah, it's not a foolproof method, but it's my method. Yeah.
What's your favourite destination to fly to with TUI? Have you flown to a majority of them by now, or are you still a few that you want to tick off on the list?
No, I've flown to quite a few, yeah. So mine's a little contentious actually, because a lot of guys hate flying. Well, not hate flying there, but a lot of guys don't like it because it's a long flight. I like Dalaman in Turkey.
Okay.
Only when it's on the RMP approach, because you're usually flying between the mountains. I think that's just insanely cool. But it can be a hard day out because you know there's like a lot of stuff you got to do with the RMP approach, and you just got to be safe. But in terms of ease, I like Reyes. I like Menorca. They're chilled. Um, Paphos, Larnaca, they're long destinations, but you know it's an ILS procedural approach,
Yeah.
quite straightforward. Um, yeah. There's quite a few. I like coming back into Cardiff, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Nothing like
Yeah,
home.
nothing like home, the motherland of Wales. You know, yeah. So
I bet it's a
yeah.
bit of a different look to Vero Beach, though, I'm sure, on the approach.
Yeah, just a bit. Well, we've got the sea, haven't we? And we got
Yeah, you have to be fair. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I'm in Essex, so we haven't really got any nice coast around here. We've got Southend, but I'm quite far away from that. So yeah, quite
All right,
central.
yeah,
So yeah, unfortunately, no coast
yeah,
around here. But I'd like to do a little segment on future you as well. What
yeah,
kind of pilot do you sort of aspire to be?
yeah. I aspire to be a pilot that makes the guy next to me feel safe, you know, and makes them feel comfortable. I want to be the kind of pilot that, you know, the captain or the first officer when I'm captain comes away from the flight and they feel like they've had a nice day out, you know. And I think that comes from personality, but it also comes from a quiet confidence. you know, me knowing my stuff, me being able to back it up, me being able to handle the aircraft and manage it, that all falls into it, and that all comes with experience. So yeah, like I think you know that I just want to be. As I said, you know, I just want to be a good kind of team player, and somebody who's kind of remembered as somebody who's quite, you know, nice to fly with, really. I would never. The last thing I'd ever want is to be one of them guys that, you know, you get on the roster and like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, not saying we have any at Cardiff, but you know, you do your
No, of course.
stories. But yeah, and I think, you know, I'd like to do more sort of stuff in the company. TUI's got some great opportunities, you know, to progress and do sort of like training or recruitment and stuff like that. So I definitely like to get more into that. Um, and I just want to be good at my craft. Like, you know, I just want to be the best I can be at my craft. I don't want to be the best in the world. I'm not going to be the best in the world or at the company or maybe even at Cardiff. You know, I'm probably not. But I just want to be the best that I can be, you know, and that comes from commitment, that comes from studying, that comes from reflection. I just want to do my job well and be safe and be good at it and be a good professional. And I think that's the kind of pilot I want to be. You know, there's no ego in the cockpit, really. There's no place for it.
I love that. I've seen you guys have the 7-8 as well. Is it something you want to fly one day? Get into long haul and stuff, or
Yes.
are you happy? Are you more happy sort of
Yeah.
short medium, or do you want to get into long haul eventually? Do you think?
Well, yeah. So I would love to try long haul. That's always been something I've wanted to do, especially on the 787. Something great aircraft.
Yeah, incredible.
So yeah. So I 100% want to try it. And then I might come back onto the 737 for command. You know, to become a captain.
Yeah,
But you know, if I mean, it depends on sort of how things work. But if it's such that, you know, command comes a lot faster because of people just moving up on the seniority list, and I've not even got time to go to the 7-8. I'll stay at the 7-3. You know, I think I sort of I really want to try long haul, but yeah, if it was between that and getting captain, I think I'd have to pick captain, wouldn't I?
yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
so. Would you
yeah.
say that's the
But I'd have
most thing you're most excited for, Captain? Do you think?
No, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say I mean, I love the idea of being a captain, but I wouldn't say
Yeah,
something that I'm excited to do because there's a lot of pressure and a lot of, you know, training and courses that come with it. You got to do your command course, which is tough. So I think I'm excited about the idea of the actual doing it. I'm like, oh gosh, that's going to be a lot of work. And I'm only a two striper, so it's a long way off for me anyway.
it's achievable.
Um,
It's always achievable.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, but I think the things that would excite me a lot are, you know, maybe going long haul, taking a role maybe in training. I'd love to go into training. Um, you know, like before, in between finishing at Skyborne and starting TUI, I was a 737 sim instructor in Gloucester and doing like
Oh wow,
experience days. So in a sim 737, and it was people doing like experience days. So yeah, and I just love the idea of coming in and teaching people, you know, seeing people genuinely get happy at the fact that they've progressed and achieved something themselves. So that excites me a lot. Also just kind of starting my life, man, you know, like building a family, you know, making flying a career rather than my life, because that's what it is right now.
yeah,
You know, so I live in aviation, but I'm kind of looking forward to be able to have other priorities in life as well. You know, and be able to come to work and have something to come home to. You know what I mean?
of course. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, all the hard work's paid off for the career, hasn't it? So you need something that is been
yeah,
rewarded for as well. Yeah, definitely. And you say your partner
that's it.
flies as well. Is that correct?
She does, yeah. She flies for EasyJet,
Oh wow.
so she's on the Airbus, but she's Manchester based. Um, so yeah, we're sort of going up and down until we can figure out where to settle.
Did you guys meet in your training or?
No. So we met on Hinge.
Oh, okay, yeah,
When I
nice.
was so I used to live up Manchester working in TV. And then I was flying up to Barton and she was flying up to Barton, this aerodrome in Manchester. I think I saw her once on the aerodrome. And I was like, oh, she's all right. And I was trying to ask her home, but no one knew who I was on about. And then like literally like a year later, she popped up on Hinge, and I was like, oh, it's you. You're the one I saw on that thing and then we obviously, you know, we loved flying, so we stuck with that, and we both decided to join the academy together, and we did, and we were on the same course. We went through the entire training together,
Oh wow.
and and then you know, within the same month, within the same month, we both kind of got our jobs, and that was it. So yeah, it's been 4.5 years now. So
Wow,
good stuff. Yeah.
congratulations! It's pretty good support wise that you're both going through the same thing as well, in terms of the
it
training and
was
stuff.
it. Yeah, oh man, like I think if I didn't have her through my training, I would have struggled a lot more. Like, she's like she's quite grounded as well. Like I'm not. I think, I can sometimes get a bit like worked up about things if I'm not achieving something. Like with the exams, if I kept getting things wrong, I'd get a bit worked up. And she would kind of just balance me out a bit and be like, well, if you just do this, and you see what I mean.
Yeah,
Which was really good. At the same time, when you're in a relationship, there's things you want to do as a couple, and being in a full-time integrated course, that can be tough, because you want to do the romantic stuff, you want to go out for nice dinners, you want to get away from aviation, and it's very hard because you're sort of there 24/7. You're living on base. You're flying non-stop, and that's all you're both going through the same stresses together. So then you can both lean on each other, but then you're also both stressed at the same time. So like there was times doing MCC, I'd come back and I was, oh, I'm stressed, I had a terrible lesson. She's like, oh, I'm stressed, I also had a terrible lesson. And it's like, oh, what are we gonna do then? Like,
trauma bonding.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, but no, it's good that it's nice. It's good to have somebody in the industry who gets it as well. Like me, I think trying to explain to anybody else that I found the RMPAR approach rather difficult. They'd be like, "What are you on about?" So yeah, that's nice.
In terms of advice for the next generation, what's something you wish someone told you at the very start of your training?
Um, I wish somebody had told me at the start of my training that it will work out, because I think that was the biggest obstacle for me. It wasn't as much the exams, it was the fear of me just completely failing them. And I think if I had somebody there at the start of my training to say it will work out, it's maths. If you put the work in, you put the time in, then there is only one outcome. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds ridiculous because life is variable, but genuinely, put the work in, put the study in, you will pass. It's not up for debate. You know what I mean? You can't do every question in the bank tenfold, then come into the exam and just completely screw it up, unless you close your eyes and just raw dog it. You know what I mean? So I think and I wish somebody had kind of given me the reassurance, because I think you go from, the pressure of financially committing, to the pressure of being on the course, the pressure of seeing some of your colleagues get chopped, the pressure of, constantly getting tested. Like you feel like it's hanging on a string, and it's actually in reality a lot more stable. Like, I didn't realize, but the academy wouldn't have just kicked me out if I'd failed one exam. They would have called me in, asked me what happened, we would have worked through it. And all right, if I'd kept failing over and over again, okay, eventually they would have had to have done something. But I was so kind of catastrophizing everything, and I think, yeah, bit of a long-winded answer. I do apologize,
No,
but
no,
it's
it's good. I mean, the people who are in that position at the minute will find that really helpful. So, would you say it's the same sort of advice for people that are maybe got training on hold, like myself, financial reasons or maybe medical reasons? Would you say it's the same thing? Just it'll work out in the end to keep with it? Because I know some people
yeah.
go somewhere else and they might pursue another career and they're always thinking in the back of their mind, oh, what if I sort of stayed with it? You know?
I'd say it'll work out in the end. And it sounds like really vague and terrible advice, but it comes from a place of experience. Yeah, if your training's on hold, I think the flip side to that is you can't sit around and do nothing and say, well, it's going to work out. There needs to be input for there to be output. You can't have one half of the equation without the other. But if you're doing 100%, then you will get it back. And I think that's the important point to reiterate. If you're working every day, if you're putting time and effort into your training, if you're doing as much as you can, it will work. It will. There's no question about it. Unless you break your back and can't fly ever again. You know what I mean? And then with the medical side of things, look, if you're up against the CAA and they won't give you a class one, then there's only so much you can do. But even if you would have to have quite a bad impairment not to be able to fly full stop. When I used to fly the microlights, it was a self-declaration. a class 2 is not as stringent as a class 1, and
Yeah.
even if you don't pass something, they'll give you it with a restriction anyway. So even if you can't get class 1, you can still fly, and you can still instruct. You can instruct on a class 2. You can instruct PPLs on a class 2. You can still fly for money. You can still fly as a job, just not in the same capacity as being an airline pilot. But that doesn't matter. In fact, some people would say it's more fun instructing. You know what I mean? So this is what I mean. It will work out. If you want to do it, it'll work out. You just got to hold up your end of the bargain, and the universe, as people like to say as they rub their crystals, will give it back.
I wonder what that was
It,
above your head.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, the crystal ball. You can just say, yeah. But that's it. If you put it in, you'll get it back, 100%.
No, I think that's top advice for anyone really that's pursuing it, no matter what age. I think it's very important for people to sort of see that and understand it, because I think there's quite a lot of American advice out there, I've noticed on social media and stuff like that. But I think when it's UK, there's not that much advice on how to get into certain jobs and how you can make money from aviation. That's sort of what I wanted to try and do with this, just to people can see it sort of in a UK light, because obviously it's very different to the US for many reasons.
It is, yeah. I mean, obviously, US is a completely different kettle of fish. You have 1,500 hours in a P828 before you can obviously go to the airlines. Fair enough. But yeah, it's different. I think like a really good thing that I learned or kind of discovered when I was doing my flight training was the art of detachment, it's called. So it's like kind of a psychological thing where, like, imagine you're holding your phone in your hand. In one scenario you're holding it over a skyscraper, and then on one scenario you're sat on the couch just holding it. You're far more likely to drop it when you're in the skyscraper because you're that scared of dropping it. And I think it's kind of like that applies in aviation massively with interviews, with tests. If you're going into a test like I was, which and I say, the way I wasn't good, and I've since learned to control it. But like during my flight training, I was like, I gotta pass. I still passed, but I would do worse than if I just chilled out and just took it as another day out. And then in interviews, like, you kind of just got to go into it and kind of think to yourself, what if I don't get it? What's the worst that happens? Am I never going to be a pilot? No. So keep interviewing. I'll try them again, or try another airline. And and the best advice my missus said to me with any exam is, she said, if you want to do it well, act like you're doing it bored. And I was like, oh, because it just slows it all down.
I like
it's
that.
like, ILS, all right, yeah, all right. And when I tried it, I was like, oh my gosh, it actually works. Like, acting like, kind of convincing myself I was bored, actually just slowed everything down and made it a lot easier. So
that was my last question, was going to be, what would your bit of advice be for anyone? But I think that's a perfect little quote there. So I think we'll use that one.
that's it. To be enthusiastic but bored internally, and you'll be like, that's the golden ratio, internally, just like, oh.
I love that. And you were a DJ
Yeah.
before, is that right? Are you still DJ now on the side, or?
Yeah, well, so no, I used to DJ. I stopped before I joined TUI. So yeah, I started when I was 16. Did that for a while, bit of a side quest, and just sort of did some places abroad in Spain and Bulgaria and up and down the UK. And then it really helped paying for flight school, because it meant I could work 7 days a week, which I did for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So it was just Monday to Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday I'd work as a freelance audio engineer. So 7 days flat out, just work. And it was good. I think without DJing, I wouldn't have been able to afford it as quick as I did. And sort of, well, obviously my family did help as well, but but then I retired just before I started TUI. I wouldn't say I was getting too old, but for me, I'd been doing it long enough. I'd done it for 11 years, and I was kind of like, kind of bored with it. There's only so many times you
Spinning
can
decks
play.
of flying planes. I'd say flying planes is
Yeah,
better.
that's it. There's a lot more parallels than you think, trust me.
Well, I mean, it's great to speak to someone that's very like-minded to myself. I think there's a lot of good advice that I've taken from it. I'm sure the listeners will take from this as well. And I think you're a top individual with great attitude by the sounds of it. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything you'd like people to follow you on Instagram, anything like that?
Yeah, of course. My Instagram's Dillon James, which is Dillon. I post a lot of my flying stuff on there when I am flying. Usually I'll try and sneak a little video in. So if that interests you, then do drop me a follow. And if you're stuck and need advice, just don't be afraid to drop me a message. I'm happy to help where I can.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Chasing Altitude podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube or give us a follow on Spotify so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Chasing Altitude. And if you're a pilot or anyone with an aviation background listening to this and you'd like to come on the show, drop me a DM. I'd love to connect. Have a great week and keep chasing altitude.